ago, my husband Ryan was in the kitchen emptying the garbage can under the sink.
Oh.
Earlier that day, we learned that our unit had finished as not only the #1 unit in the Diamond Division, but as the #1 unit in the whole nation. As Ryan shook out the new liner for the garbage can, he looked up at me and said, "I mean, Aim, it's a big nation." And it was at that moment, over a trash bag liner, that the enormity hit. What an incredible team of consultants I get to lead. The #1 unit in the nation. Wow. Mary Kay came into my life almost 30 years ago. I was in 6th grade, and my mom came home from getting her nails done with a VHS tape about the Mary Kay opportunity. I remember there was a woman with big blonde hair and bright red lipstick on the TV screen in our kitchen. As my mom watched, my sister and I rolled our eyes and quietly walked out of the room. This Mary Kay thing, we thought, was weird. Up to that point, we'd led a very normal life. My parents worked as an insurance broker and a high school English teacher, and we lived in a tiny, quiet, rural community called Salmonock. However, my mom's brother, my Uncle Jeff, was working for IBM in Rome. He was only in Italy for 2 years, and my mom really wanted to take us to see him, but there wasn't enough money. She decided to start her Mary Kay business in August, and the following July, we all went to Europe for 2 weeks. When I first started my Mary Kay business, I was newly married. I had just finished my master's degree in English literature. I was teaching high school English, like my mom, in a small farm community south of Chicago, and I was coaching volleyball and basketball. About 5 months after our wedding, I began to feel the need for something more. I loved the high school students that I worked with, and I loved teaching, but I needed friendships with healthy adult women. My husband at that time was teaching at a private Catholic high school, and cash was not plentiful around our home. Finally, in looking back, I realized that I wanted a challenge. The monotony of waking up, going to school, going to practice or a game, coming home to take a walk or watch TV, and then doing that same thing day in and day out and day in and day out was driving me crazy. I needed something to be excited about, something that challenged me to grow, something new. So I met my mom for dinner at a Pizza Hut in Streator, Illinois, and I told her I wanted to start building my Mary Kay business. It was the only thing I could think of that was flexible enough to work around my crazy coaching and teaching schedules, but also met those other needs. No one would have hired me for a part-time job if I told them I can work a lot this week, but not any next week. And that was the beginning of my journey with Mary Kay. For almost 30 years, I have been immersed in the Mary Kay culture. I quite literally have a lifetime of memories and lessons learned from this opportunity. One of the most important is that the only way to truly succeed in life is to be fully me and not like anyone else. You see, though I had grown up in a Mary Kay home, entering the Mary Kay culture as a new consultant and then as a new sales director challenged me deeply. For the first few years, I constantly compared myself to everyone around me. When exposed to the sequins, the bright lights, and the overpowering enthusiasm of all of these Mary Kay leaders, I wondered secretly if I had what it took to succeed here. You see, I didn't relish creating or attending huge events or parties. I get worn out by too much people time. For me, doing the work of achieving a goal is much more comfortable than celebrating the victory. I've never seen myself as a salesperson, I get really nervous when I have to do a lot of small talk, and I certainly wasn't excited about winning glitzy prizes. I just didn't seem to be like so many of the people around me. After one particularly challenging season in my Mary Kay leadership journey, I had a tearful and life-changing conversation with National Sales Director Glenda McGuire. I'll paraphrase, but what Glenda said to me in that pivotal conversation was, Amy, we don't need you to be like any of the other leaders in Mary Kay. We already have them. We need you to be you. So many consultants and directors in our Mary Kay world will benefit when you lead with excellence in your way, using your strengths and your gifts. So cautiously at first, and then with more and more confidence, I took Glenda's advice to set goals and to work in a style that fit me. I focused on what I did well. I spent more time on the parts of our business that I could control. And each day, I became laser focused on simply getting to the next step that I could accomplish. And I continued to do that each day, each week, and each month. I invested tons of time and money in growing myself, and as I grew personally, so did my customer base, my team, and then the size of my unit. I just took the next small step over and over and over again. As Dave Blanchard writes in his book, "Today I begin a new life." This is the clay that I have been given to craft my life. This is my unique clay. I don't get someone else's clay, and they don't get mine. In short, I embraced my clay, and I worked with it. I created with my unique clay, and I quit looking at everyone else's, wondering if mine was just as good. Which leads me to the next lesson, and that is to dream big, but to act small. For the last 18 years, when no one was around and no one knew, and it didn't seem to matter or to create that much growth really, I focused on small daily efforts. I've written thousands of 6 most important things lists before going to bed. I've made thousands of booking contacts. I've held thousands of selling appointments. I've shared the Mary Kay opportunity with thousands of women. I've had thousands of one-on-one coaching conversations with consultants. I have invested thousands of hours teaching those I lead the simple, concrete skills of our business at our weekly meetings and at larger events. On any given day, none of these small steps really made that big of a difference. But as one of my good friends, Sherry Chapman, always tells me, I am annoyingly consistent. I am annoyingly consistent. Most of you would definitely beat me in a Mary Kay sprint, but there are not very many of you here who could outrun me in a Mary Kay marathon, because I will just keep going when it gets too boring and too long for most people. Especially at the beginning, as I was working at my own pace, in my own introverted style, nothing too big and nothing too flashy happened. Other consultants and directors would come along in Mary Kay and they would accomplish huge goals so quickly. They'd earn Cadillacs and top director trips in their first years in the business, and I was just plodding along on my path. It was sometimes challenging to embrace and celebrate my smaller victories, but I just kept going. And today when people ask me, how do you build the team of consultants who sold more product than any other unit in the entire United States of America, I simply say, focus on the tiny, seemingly insignificant daily activities, because those actions will move you toward your preferred future. Be inspired by the bigger picture, sure, but go home and do the small things. And keep doing them long after the inspiration has worn off, and when no one is watching, and no one is cheering, and no one knows your name. The final lesson I learned from the Mary Kay culture can be summarized by actress Reese Witherspoon. She recently proclaimed in an awards acceptance speech that, and I quote, "For women, ambition should not be a dirty word." In a later interview with Oprah Winfrey, Witherspoon elaborated, explaining a recent study done by Columbia University. Across the board in that study, ambition was considered to be an unappealing aspect of femininity. Women who were ambitious were considered unattractive, selfish, and even controlling. Another study done at Harvard showed that women often deny their own ambition in order to seem more appealing to men. Witherspoon said, "Ambition isn't about being selfish. It isn't about being self-serving. It's actually about wanting to create more and better for communities, for schools, the government, the world." We need to reframe this thought. An ambitious woman is not a terrifying thing, and it's not a repellent thing. And no one taught me this lesson better than my mom. As a teenager, I watched as she built her Mary Kay business, holding parties in the basement of our home. For years, women came to our home. They sat around her Mary Kay table trying skincare products and makeup, and after lots of laughter and chatter, they left with pink bags filled with product in their hands and smiles and Mary Kay product on their faces. And as my mom built her unit and earned her first career car, and then her first pink Cadillac, and then as she built her national area, and as she grew in confidence, she owned her ambition proudly. And she taught me one of the greatest lessons I have learned in Mary Kay, and one I hope to pass on to our 3 children. If you want your kids to be successful and confident and to have high self-esteem, you have to own those things first. If you were created with an ambitious spirit, don't hide it, don't suppress it, develop it, cherish it. Being a good steward of that ambition is one of the greatest gifts you can give your children. The Mary Kay culture is unique in many ways, but perhaps the most rare part is that ambitious women here are not only accepted, they are celebrated with reckless abandon, both for their accomplishments, but also for their femininity. What a precious and rare gift we have. I was at a leadership conference, and I heard Pastor John Ortberg say something that went straight to the core of my being. It has become the rally cry of my life, really the summary of my life's purpose in one sentence. I'll never forget where I was sitting when he said it. I'll never forget what I was wearing or how I felt. He said, "If you are a woman and God has given you the gift of leadership, then for God's sake, lead." If you are a woman and God has given you the gift of leadership, then for God's sake, lead. Some of you out there, you've been given the gift of leadership. You have been gifted an ambitious heart and a desire to make a difference. God is not calling you to be like anyone else in this world. He is not calling you to accept where you are if it is not His best for your life. If you are a woman and God has given you the gift of leadership, then for God's sake, I plead with you on behalf of the hundreds and thousands of lives that it will benefit. Lead. Thank you so much, Diamond Seminar.